Hi everyone, Sean Humphreys here. Welcome to this edition of the Take Charge of Change podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we're going to talk about 6 mental habits of people who manage their emotions really well. This is a critical discussion that impacts our professional and personal resilience. You'll enjoy this podcast. So this particular article came from Inc. magazine, and the author of the article was Marcel Schwantes, I think it's pronounced, but it had some great tips. You know, there are just some people we come in contact with that are just really intelligent emotionally. They can handle their emotions well. They don't let them get the better of them. They handle relationships well as in addition. And a lot of this is about self-control. And so I want to walk you through very quickly the tips that are covered in this particular article. This is an important area because if we allow emotions to get out of control, it just shuts down our prefrontal cortex. We're far less effective, professionally and in our personal lives. So when anger comes knocking, here are some habits to begin thinking about. So number one, emotionally intelligent people put boundaries on people who make them angry. So they're self-aware. They understand those people that sort of hit their buttons, press their buttons, get them angry. They're very strategic about how they relate to those people. And emotionally intelligent people have the ability to approach those people and to talk about, what their limits are, what situations get in the way of them, relating with them effectively, to be assertive enough to confront those people and set limits around the communication. That's a difficult thing to do, but it's something to cultivate. Don't let people just keep pushing your buttons. I don't think the answer is just ignore them, but to have frank discussions and try to find some middle ground so you can create room for communication. Number two, they get to the bottom of why they're really angry. So emotionally intelligent people realize the reason for their anger may run much deeper than what they're experiencing on the surface at that moment. Now part of that, and some of you may just roll your eyes on this, but just spend some time disengaging. At the end of the day or after that emotional event, get your journal out and start writing about it. Like, there are some things that are triggering that anger, and you need to unpack that so that it becomes something you can sort of deal with and maybe, put a halt to. And some of those things might be very deep-seated. So we know professionally not being likable and losing our self-control and getting angry definitely puts a ceiling on our professional opportunities, whether it's with our clients or with the people we work with. So you need to get this thing figured out if anger and getting emotional very easily is something that you're struggling with. Okay, so self-reflection, spend some time unpacking it, getting away from the situation, writing down about the situation and reflecting on it. So 3, they respond, but they don't react. One of the quotes in this article was great. The longer I live, the more convinced I become that life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we respond to it. Very, very good words. And I think that, part of this is not being detached. I think you want to be engaged in the conversations, but, how do you keep from getting pulled into the drama? And so emotionally intelligent people know when they're being triggered and will walk away and come back when they're in a better space. Okay, so that's just that's a really practical tip. They acknowledge their anger and proceed to talk to someone to get better perspective and understanding on the situation. So is there someone you can talk to kind of get perspective? You're just seeing your side, and sometimes there's another side there, and by understanding the other side, you can be more effective the next time. They're self-aware enough to consider the potential consequences of having lost control of their emotions. Okay, basic stuff, but important questions to ask yourself. I've been in boardrooms and meetings with people that are just amazing in their ability not to get pulled into frustration and anger. And then they can keep the dialogue going, and often at the end of it, there's consensus building, there's solutions, there's action plans. But if you allow your emotion to get ramped up when somebody else is emotional with you, that's just going to disintegrate the communication very quickly. Number 4, they take a 6-second pause. Now, why 6 seconds? Well, scientists tell us that the chemicals of emotion inside of us, in our brains and bodies, usually are dissipated in about 6 seconds roughly. So during a really, really heated exchange, if you can kind of pause for a moment, not respond right away, you might find that flood of chemicals that produces the emotion really slows down. And so keep in mind that 6-second pause. It might sound a little bit funny, but it's a very practical way of sort of dissipating the emotion when you're going through it. So number 5, they're the first to reach out after an argument. So this is great advice. The tendency for many of us is to let anger and resentment fester after an argument or misunderstanding, and then cut off that person from our lives until they reach out and make an apology. You know, you may be reaching out forever. You can't control what other people are going to do. And so emotionally intelligent people will reflect, try to learn from the experience, and they'll be the ones to reach out. A person with emotional intelligence doesn't let their ego have its way at the expense of losing a friend or alienating a coworker. And number 6, they shift to the positive. So one of the things that they talk about is, you know, making sure that you find positive in that particular situation. So after a heated exchange, anger doesn't just disappear at a snap of the finger. You know, the steam can still be rising after the argument. And so you need to make a very conscious effort to deal with the anger and the emotions that you're experiencing. It could be going for a walk. And again, it could be looking at that situation from the other person's perspective. Often we don't do that. We don't practice empathy. And we need to do that, particularly in relationships where we have coworkers, we have to work closely with people, or our family relationships. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Take Charge of Change podcast. If you lead teams and you're trying to help your team to be more productive, more effective as you work towards your organizational goals, then reach out to us. We'd love to start a conversation about how we can customize our programs to help your teams to be both personally and professionally resilient and to help you achieve your objectives. You take care, be resilient.